number 10 spot, we have the iconic movie, The Matrix. I can admit, I thought this movie was just about how cool Keanu Reeves is. But it turns out there's a lot more. The movie is really about how humanity's idea of reality is dying. When Morpheus shows Neo the world as it really is, he welcomes him to the desert of the real. That line is actually taken from a book by the philosopher Jean Baudrillard called Simulacra and Simulation. This book is actually in Neo's apartment, and it is open to a chapter on nihilism. This really drives home the movie's message about reality and what that means. Nihilism is the belief that all beliefs are meaningless, kind of like the inception of ideologies. The movie also touches on how many of the people living inside our systems don't realize that we're in a system because we've never had the opportunity to step out and see it from the outside perspective. It's definitely an interesting thought, and maybe if we're able to run with this idea a little bit, it could help us improve the world that we live in.
Coming in at number 9, we have World War Z, one of the better movies to come out of the huge surge of zombie flicks that came when zombies were the biggest thing hitting the film industry. It had Brad Pitt fully formed into his dad role, and he was tasked with saving the world from a zombie pandemic. I mean, it's a zombie movie, I didn't have to tell you the plot for you to figure it out, but some people think that this movie, and many others like it, are the work of the Illuminati. Whoa!
Boy, you kind of snuck up on me there.
I am very, very sneaky, sir.
There's a conspiracy theory that the massive surge of zombie movies was all because the Illuminati wanted to condition us to the idea of a massive viral outbreak, basically to numb our senses so when they release a global pandemic for real, no one freaks out, and they keep going on with business as usual. Some people think that the current pandemic that we're in could be the work of these evil plague political puppeteers, which might be believable if this was the first time that there ever had been a global pandemic, but these things pop up about once every 100 years, so it's actually par for the course.
Moving on to number 8, we have the 1960 Alfred Hitchcock classic horror film, Psycho. By now, we all know the movie goes, creepy Norman Bates runs a cheap motel and has a really cool and good and nice relationship with his mother, except for one major problem: she's actually been dead for years.
Spoilers.
Norman has basically taken on his mother's persona, and when a young woman stops at the motel and Norman is attracted to her, his mother's personality goes out and kills her. It's weird. Anyway, just a little spoiler alert if you haven't seen the movie, but at the end when Norman is thankfully getting arrested, there's a little moment that I missed while watching that's super creepy. During the arrest, Norman's mother is really taking over his mind, and we hear a voiceover of his thoughts, but it's actually his mother's voice. But then, just for a brief second, while the camera is lingering over Norman's face, we see an overlay of his mother's skull over his face. This shot is creepy on its own, but it is Hitchcock's way of giving us a visual representation of the extremely dark reality that is inside Norman's mind.
Coming in at number 7, we have Anchorman, one of the best comedies of its time. It's when Will Ferrell was at the peak of making dirty comedies, and this one had a ton of amazing jokes, and the writing staff launched this movie into the category of best of all time. But one of the best jokes in the whole movie was hidden to a lot of moviegoers and could definitely be seen as dark depending on how you view it. There's one scene in the movie where Veronica Corningstone is out to dinner with some female employees from the news channel, and this is where they come up with the plot to throw out Ron Burgundy and usher in a new era of news reporting. Well, it just so happens to be that they are at a Mexican restaurant, and just so happens the name of that restaurant is Escupimos en su alimento. And if we get into the English translation, we get "we spit in your food." That is an amazing bit that just flew over the heads of anyone who doesn't speak Spanish. But it also makes you think back to every restaurant you have been in and what they might have done with your food.
Continuing on to number 6, we have the incredible Jordan Peele movie, Get Out. While the message of the movie gets across to the viewer pretty directly, I was surprised to find out a few hidden moments that were included to really drive home its theme. One of these moments is the famous teacup scene where Missy is stirring her tea in a cup, making a repetitive sound to give off the same hypnotic effect as a swinging pocket watch in order to put Chris into a trance. What I didn't know is that the teacup is actually symbolic of a time when slave masters would use a teacup in order to summon the people that they had enslaved. That's pretty messed up. The silver spoon that she uses to stir the tea is symbolic of the family's status in life, born with a silver spoon in their mouths. Another hidden message in the movie is basically the entire character of Rod. In the movie, the comedian Lil Rel Howery plays Chris's best friend Rod and is the movie's voice of reason. Jordan Peele has explained that this character is mimicking how black people watching horror movies would often interact with the films, especially considering the upsetting trope that black people are usually the first to get killed in horror movies. Rod says the things that people are yelling at the screen, like "get out of the house" or "don't go in there." Rod is also there to show that there is usually a higher percentage of black people watching horror movies than are being represented on screen.
Coming in number 5, we have RoboCop. This one was very shocking to me. Did you know that the movie RoboCop is actually about Jesus Christ?
What?
Yeah.
Jesus Christ!
Yeah, this story of a robot man with a handgun taking out crime is based on the story of Jesus. And this isn't just speculation, this was stated by the director of the movie, Paul Verhoeven. And when you watch the movie knowing this, you can see the not so subtle hints towards Jesus. The movie starts with a man who's trying to do good, and then he is horribly betrayed and killed by people that he thought were his friends. This is his crucifixion. Then we see him resurrected, more powerful than ever before. Obviously, Jesus had less robot parts in his resurrection. After that, you have him go on a quest for justice, and he must confront the people who stabbed him in the back. And if you're still not sold, at the end of the movie, you have RoboCop walking across a very shallow level of water to make it seem as if he was walking on water. I never knew RoboCop was Christian.
Coming in at number 4, we have one of the most classic psychological horror movies ever, The Shining. On the surface, the movie is really just about a guy who goes to a hotel to interview for a caretaker job, and absolute mania ensues. But what is the movie hiding? Well, it is mentioned early on in the movie that the hotel was built over an Indian burial ground. The hotel even seems to boast about this fact, and it really sets the scene for the imagery to come that shows the movie's underlying theme of the Europeans' genocide of indigenous people. The movie's director, Stanley Kubrick, placed a lot of subtle references in everything from wardrobe to set decoration and even to the film's score. Some even believe that the scene with the blood pouring out of the elevator is a symbol for bringing up what is below the hotel. The final piece of imagery in the movie is the fact that it ends off with Jack at a 4th of July party. Many believe that the 4th of July is a holiday that best represents settlers' false claims to the land that once belonged solely to indigenous people.
Coming in number 3, we have Godzilla, maybe the most famous monster movie of all time. Godzilla movies are great, and the massive lizard tearing down the world brought with it the entire kaiju movie genre. Well, here's something that you didn't know about this movie, or at least I didn't know about the movie, but they were inspired by the Nagasaki and Hiroshima nuclear attacks. Yeah, when you hear that, it actually makes perfect sense. The first Godzilla movie came out in the 50s. At this point, Japan was definitely still in the throes of dealing with a nuclear disaster. Radiation sickness was a real thing, and something that the entire country was terrified of. And what causes Godzilla to be created? Well, it's a nuclear radiated lizard. In the movie, they even take samples from the monster's footprints, and they find massive levels of radiation coming off the creature. It could be why this movie was such a big hit. It brought together an entire country to get entertained by something that was a common fear.
Moving on down to number 2, we have the X-Men. They are fierce and we love them, but what is the hidden message behind these mutant warriors? If you've ever wondered why the X-Men are always facing political issues, it's because they are meant to mirror our real-life marginalized groups, more specifically members of the LGBTQIA+ community. The mutants' powers usually begin to manifest around puberty, the same time that humans begin to discover sexuality, and a lot of the mutants feel shame about who they are and their special abilities. Colonel Stryker is the franchise's example of the prejudice and phobias that people in our world have to deal with, and why things like pride are so important. The series shows scenes of mutants coming out to very angry and upset parents, which is a very real and unfortunate situation that many people in queer communities have to deal with every single day. You can totally see why Magneto is so angry and fights for the freedom of the mutants to just be who they are. We should all take a page out of Magneto's book and fight for everyone to be treated the same, because love is love is love is love.
Alright guys, coming to the number 1 spot, we have Fight Club. Fight Club is an extremely rich movie that is packed with subtle messages. Every time I see this movie, there is something more to take out of it. Like, I don't know if you know this, but there's the famous scene in Fight Club where Edward Norton has to throw himself down the stairs. They shot this scene over 30 times, and Fight Club's director, David Fincher, ended up using the first take, but that's not the dark hidden message. Partway through Fight Club, we have Tyler Durden, who's played by Brad Pitt. And something that this character does for poops and giggles is splice in scenes from pornos into family-friendly movies at the movie theater that he works at.
Oh, that's nasty.
And if you watch the movie Fight Club very closely, you can see that Tyler Durden's character pops up before he's actually introduced to the movie. Director David Fincher splices him into certain scenes for just a second, because we all know the ending of Fight Club, spoiler alert for anyone who hasn't seen this movie. Tyler Durden is actually the split personality that manifests itself inside the main character's mind.
Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have one of Hollywood's most famous actors ever, James Dean. He was Hollywood's bad boy, but he also had a passion for fast cars. On September 30th, 1955, when he was just 24 years old, he was speeding in his Porsche 550 Spyder when he unfortunately crashed into another car traveling the opposite direction and lost his life. When he died, he had only filmed 3 movies, 2 of which hadn't even been released yet. It's really sad to think about how much potential and how much more life he had to live before it was tragically cut short. To make this already dark moment a little creepier, just 7 days before his death, James met with celebrated actor Alec Guinness to show off his new car. Alec then told James, "If you get in that car, you'll be found dead in it by next week." In our number 9 spot, we've got the tragic murder of comedy legend Phil Hartman. Before I dive into this one, guys, make sure you hit that thumbs up if you're enjoying the video so far. In May of 1998, Phil and his wife Bryn got into a fiery argument about Bryn's repeated drug use. Apparently the argument was so bad that Phil told her he would leave her if she didn't stop using drugs. After the fight, Phil went to their bedroom to sleep, but Bryn had a pretty worrisome mix of substances in her system. She was drinking alcohol, taking Zoloft, which is an antidepressant, and had also ingested cocaine. In her intoxicated state, she ended up grabbing a gun, went into the bedroom where Phil was sleeping, and shot him 3 times, killing him. Bryn then drove to her friend Ronald Douglas's house and confessed to killing her husband. Of course, Ronald's initial reaction was disbelief, so the pair drove back to the house, but in separate cars. On the drive back, Bryn called another friend and confessed again. When the two arrived back at the house, Ron saw the body of Phil and immediately called 911. When the police arrived, they were escorting Ron and the 2 children of Phil and Bryn out of the house when Bryn locked herself in a bedroom in the house where she ended up committing suicide. It's a pretty tragic end to what was already a dark and upsetting story. In our number 8 spot, we've got the story of Carl Switzer. Carl was a child actor who got his start in the 1930s. By the time he was an adult, he had swapped out most of his acting for a more low-key lifestyle as a dog trainer and breeder. In 1959, Carl had agreed to train a hunting dog for a man named Moses Samuel Stilts. After the dog ran off and got lost, Carl offered a $35 reward to anyone who could find the dog and bring him back. When someone finally found the dog, Carl gave him the $35 and bought him $15 worth of drinks to say thank you. Several days later, Carl and his friend Jack Pyatt decided that Moses should have been the one to pay for the reward and went to the home he was staying at to confront him. One thing led to another and Moses ended up shooting Carl. Carl's death was on the same day as legendary director Cecil B. DeMille, so it ended up getting greatly overshadowed in the news and tabloids. Based on Moses' testimony, he was never convicted of the murder and it was ruled as an act of self-defense. But in a turn of events, 42 years later, on January 25th, 2001, a man named Tom Corrigan, who was Moses' stepson, decided to come forward about the true events of that night. Tom revealed that the story Moses had painted wasn't exactly true, and Tom even said, "It was more like murder." I'm not sure why it took him so long to come out with the truth, but I'm sure it would have been pretty scary for him to have been holding on to that for all those years. Coming in at number 7, we have the unsolved murder of William Desmond Taylor. William was one of the most successful silent film directors of the 1910s and the 20s. During his height as a director, the industry was beginning to shift from silent films into talking pictures, which were called talkies. On February 2nd, 1922, William was found dead inside his apartment. Because of the times and the fact that crime scene preservation didn't really exist yet, a large crowd gathered inside his home to look at the scene and the body. Someone who claimed they were a doctor stepped forward and began to examine the body before claiming that William had died from a stomach hemorrhage. When the real authorities arrived, this doctor had already disappeared and the investigation began. Authorities rolled over the body of William only to find that he had actually been shot in the back twice, which is what really caused his death. Did that supposed doctor have anything to do with the murder, or was he just really terrible at his job? Let me know what you guys think. When William was found, he still had cash in his wallet as well as other valuable items, so robbery didn't really seem to be the motive in this case. There were many suspects in the case, but because of lack of evidence and crime scene contamination, this case has been cold for almost a full century. I wonder if we'll ever really know what happened to William. Moving on to number 6, we have the story of 28-year-old actor Johnny Lewis. In 2012, Johnny was found dead at the home of his landlord, 81-year-old Catherine Davis. Police were called to the home after a few people who were at the home next door had been attacked by Johnny and then heard Catherine screaming next door. When police arrived, they found Johnny dead in the driveway, as well as Catherine and her cat, both dead inside the home. The investigation concluded that Johnny had killed Catherine's cat and then Catherine, and then climbed up onto the roof where he ended up falling to his death. A toxicology report showed that there were no drugs or alcohol in his system at the time of the death, which really leaves us with the question as to why this all happened. How does a seemingly normal guy just suddenly commit such an atrocious crime? While we will never know for sure, it is said that Johnny had a head injury that went untreated, so it is possible that this led to some kind of psychological disorder that could lead to extremely violent and angry outbursts. Coming in at our number 5 spot, we have a story about Loretta Young. In 1935, Clark Gable and Loretta Young were co-stars on the movie The Call of the Wild. They ended up having some sort of fling which left Loretta pregnant. Because of the times and the fact that they were unwed, this of course would have caused a major scandal. Loretta ended up leaving the country for what they called an extended holiday for the rest of her pregnancy. After the baby was born, she dropped it off at an orphanage, only to return sometime later and adopt what was actually her biological child. While she maintained the story that her daughter was adopted, as the child grew, she inherited her father's famous distinctive ears, which led to the public finding out about the truth. This is a dark Hollywood moment because it's just really upsetting that a woman had to jump through all of those hoops in order to be able to lead a successful career and also raise her child. In our number 4 spot today, we have the death of Thelma Todd. Thelma was an extremely talented comedic actor who ended up dying from carbon monoxide poisoning. On the night of her death, Thelma was out with friends for an evening on the town. Around 2 a.m., her driver dropped her off at her cafe where she lived in the above apartment. Thelma realized she was locked out, so she began to walk to her business partner and lover, Ronald West's house, which was just up the road. She went down into the garage and sat in a car, and little is known about what happened after. The next morning, her longtime maid came down into the garage to grab Thelma's car for her, which was their regular morning routine, but instead she tragically found Thelma slumped over in the driver's seat. The death was ruled an accident, and it is said that she turned the car on to warm up, but with the garage doors closed, she ended up accidentally poisoning herself and passed out at the wheel. Thelma was 29 years old at the time and was at the peak of her career, so seems pretty unlikely. She had no marks on her body except for a bruise on her lip, which is said to have been from hitting her face on the steering wheel. There's a lot of speculation that Ronald was involved in her death, and some say he even confessed to it on his deathbed, but all of these claims have never been proven. Coming in at number 3, we have the stabbing death of Johnny Stompanato. In 1958, Johnny was found dead in famous actress Lana Turner's home. Lana's 14-year-old daughter Cheryl confessed to stabbing him, saying that he had attacked her mom after an argument the two were having. While the courts ruled that the killing was justified, this did not stop rumors from swirling about what people speculated really happened. The most common was that Lana had actually murdered her boyfriend, but her daughter took the fall since the court wouldn't be as harsh on a minor. But in a darker, even more upsetting rumor, people claimed that Lana had caught Johnny and her daughter in bed, which led her to kill him, and then made her daughter take the blame. I don't think that this version is true, or at least I really hope it isn't, but I obviously wasn't there, so anything is possible. In our number 2 spot, we have the story of Sid Vicious. Sid, whose real name is John Simon Ritchie, was a bassist and singer for the most famous British rock band, the Pistols. On October 12, 1978, an employee of the Chelsea Hotel got a mysterious phone call which alerted them to trouble in room 100. When authorities arrived to the room, they found Sid, who was extremely high on drugs, and Sid's girlfriend at the time, Nancy Spungen, dead in the bathroom from a stab wound to the stomach. Sid was subsequently arrested and charged with Nancy's murder. 10 days after this incident, Sid attempted which led him to getting sent to the Bellevue Hospital, where he later tried to commit again. He tried to jump out of a window, yelling something like, "I want to be with my Nancy," before being pulled back inside by hospital staff. On February 1st, 1979, almost 4 months after Nancy's death, Sid ended up overdosing on His friends actually ended up reviving him, but he passed away the next morning. After his death, his mother said that she found a note in his pocket that read, "We had a death pact, and I have to keep my end of the bargain. Please bury me next to my baby. Bury me in my leather jacket, jeans, and motorcycle boots. Goodbye." Sadly, this note wasn't found until after he had already been cremated, but even if it was found earlier, Nancy had been buried in a Jewish cemetery, and Sid wouldn't have been allowed to be buried there. It is still unclear what happened that night that Nancy died. Some theories include that a drug dealer had done it while Sid was out cold from the drugs he had ingested. Some think the pair really did have some sort of pact that really went awry, and of course some people really do believe that Sid was solely responsible, whether it was drug-induced psychosis or simply just a troubled young man committing a really horrifying crime. Whatever really happened, it is so tragic that 2 young people ended up losing their lives. In our number 1 spot today, guys, we have one of the most, if not the most famous Hollywood murders there have ever been. The murder of Sharon Tate. Sharon Tate was an actor and model who was praised as one of Hollywood's most promising newcomers. Sharon lived with her husband Roman Polanski at a rental home in Los Angeles, and the two were expecting a baby together as Sharon was 8.5 months pregnant. On August 8, 1969, Sharon was having some friends over at her house while Roman was away working in London. Unfortunately, on this night, 5 members of the Manson family, if you can call them that, chose this house to target for their disgusting and evil plans. When these monsters arrived at the house, some of the most horrific acts ensued, which left 5 people, as well as Sharon's unborn child, dead. While I won't go into the details of what happened that night because there really just isn't enough time for me to do the story justice, I will mention that before the murderers left the house, they wrote "pig" on the front door in Sharon's blood. If this wasn't enough, the group of monsters went on to commit 2 more murders the next night on Leno and Rosemary LaBianca. While nothing can truly give justice to the victims, all 5 of the murderers were arrested and sentenced to death, until their sentences were commuted to life in prison after the death penalty was ruled unconstitutional in California. Some of them have died in jail, but some of them are still alive. They have all applied for parole many times, but are denied every time. Starting off this list in our number 10 spot, we have Elvis Presley. There have been rumors and conspiracy theories surrounding Elvis Presley's success and his alleged deal with the devil to achieve fame and fortune. Some fans and theorists believe that Presley's success was not solely due to his musical talent, but rather his involvement in the occult and the supernatural. One of the most prevalent rumors surrounding Presley's alleged deal with the devil is the fact that he was born a twin, but his brother Jesse Garon was stillborn. According to the rumor, Presley made a pact with the devil to trade his twin brother's life for his own success. I personally think that that is a particularly cruel rumor and conspiracy, and am much more on the side of those who believe that Presley's interest in mysticism and the occult was evidence of his involvement in dark practices. Some point to his love for black magic and spiritualism as proof that he made a deal with the devil. Despite the persistent rumors, there is no concrete evidence that Elvis Presley ever sold his soul or made a deal with the devil. These rumors are likely just a product of his enduring fame and the allure of the supernatural. In our number 9 spot today, we have Justin Bieber. I'll be honest, I am a believer, so it was news to me when I found out that some people think he too has sold his soul. Some have pointed to his music videos and lyrics, as well as his public behavior and controversial actions as evidence of his supposed pact with the devil. People believe that Bieber's meteoric rise to fame and success at a young age was too sudden to be natural, and that he must have made a deal with the devil to achieve it, while others point to his lyrics, music videos, and imagery, which they believe contain hidden symbols and messages associated with the occult. Many of these claims are most likely the result of speculation, rumors, and conspiracy theories fueled by Bieber's controversial personal life and the internet's tendency to spread sensationalized stories, but hey, who am I to say for sure? In our number 8 spot today, we have Elizabeth Bathory. Elizabeth was a Hungarian noblewoman who lived from August of 1560 to August of 1614. She was born into one of the oldest and most powerful families in Transylvania, and she was well educated and ran various estates and bore many children. Oh, and this is all happening while she is also killing young women and bathing in their blood. Yeah, weird and gross, and also terrible. Elizabeth is known for killing her servants and bathing in their blood as she believed it would keep her young. Not only this, but she is also said to have made a deal with the devil in order to gain this sort of power. All accounts of Elizabeth remember her as a terrible, evil person. It is said that her number of victims most likely ranges somewhere from 175 to 200, but some people claim that it might be as many as 600. It is no wonder she is referred to as Countess Dracula. In our number 7 spot today, we have Madonna. Madonna has been accused of making a deal with the devil for her success and longevity in the music industry. The rumors have persisted over the years due to her use of provocative and controversial imagery in her performances, as well as her supposed connections to secret societies and the occult. Some people believe that her massive success in the music industry and her often controversial behavior are all signs that she made a deal with the devil. Others point to her use of religious imagery in her music and performances, which they believe is a deliberate attempt to subvert traditional religious values. Some people just can't get over that the girl wants to have fun, and she's been having fun in the public eye for decades now. I get it, Madonna gets a little carried away from time to time, but that doesn't mean the woman sold her soul. Or does it? In our number 6 spot today, we have Johann Faust. According to the stories passed down about this man, it is said that he was an alchemist and astrologer who lived in Germany during the early 1500s. It is said that in his plight to become the smartest man in the world, while also enjoying as many earthly pleasures as possible, he summoned the help of a demon named Mephistopheles. There are terrible stories about how cruel and truly evil this man was, and as a professor, it is said that he looked down on everyone else. Local priests apparently believed that he had actually made a deal with the devil in which he sold his soul to him, and there are also stories that say his pet dog was actually a demon who was able to shapeshift. During his life, he did publish several grimoires, and in 1540, while conducting some sort of alchemic experiment, his laboratory exploded. Just thought that was a fun little anecdote to share with you guys. In our number 5 spot today, we have Michael Jackson. Definitely one of the celebrities who has had the most connections to the occult. Some fans and theorists believe that Jackson's success, talent, and enduring popularity could not be attributed solely to his hard work and dedication, but rather to a supernatural pact that he had made. One of the most persistent rumors surrounding Jackson's supposed deal with the devil was that he made the pact at the age of 12. According to this rumor, Jackson traded his soul to achieve success in the music industry. Others have pointed to Jackson's fascination with the occult and his interest in spiritual practices as evidence of his involvement in the dark arts. Some also cite his dramatic physical transformations as proof of his alleged deal with the devil. At the end of the day, did Michael Jackson have a deal with the devil? Well, I guess I'll just let you decide for yourself. It's my way of saying no, none of these people did, because the devil doesn't exist. In our number 4 spot today, we have Aleister Crowley. This man is quite well known for being the leader of an occult group, and this really does stem back even into his childhood. It is said that quite early on, Aleister started calling himself the Beast and the Antichrist, and he is even quoted as saying that God and Satan fought over his soul. In one of his books, he wrote, quote, "I was in the death struggle with self. God and Satan fought for my soul those 3 long hours. God conquered, Now, I have only one doubt left. Which of the twain was God? Many people believe that perhaps he made a deal with Satan, but it is possible that these are just rumblings based on Alistair's teachings and beliefs. In our number 3 spot today, we have Beyonce. Queen Bee, an absolute living legend. Like her husband though, who we spoke about on part 1, Beyonce has also been accused of being a member of the Illuminati and selling her soul for fame and fortune. The claim that Beyonce sold her soul is a conspiracy theory that has been circulating online for several years. However, there is no evidence to support this claim. Just don't want the bee people to come for me. The belief that Beyonce sold her soul likely stems from her success, which some people may find hard to believe without a supernatural explanation. I do understand that one. I mean, did you see Homecoming? Additionally, her music and performances often incorporate religious and spiritual imagery, which may further fuel the rumors. Also forgot to include that people think she's a part of the Illuminati. Okay, that's important. People think that she is directly related to a satanic organization. The success of talented and hardworking individuals like Beyonce is typically the result of dedication, perseverance, and talent, but some people just swear it's soul selling. In our number 2 spot today, we have Theophilus of Adna. For this one, we are taking it back a little bit, all the way to 538 AD. Theophilus of Adna was a cleric in the Roman Catholic Church. So basically, one day he was elected to become the new bishop, but he ended up denying the offer, as it is said that he wanted a more priestly sort of position instead of one with all of that power and responsibility. It is said that he wanted the position of archdeacon, which would have seen him controlling where the donation money went. So apparently, in passing on this bishop position, he thought that if he gave this bishop position to his rival, then his rival should at least be grateful enough to give him the position he wanted. But of course, this did not happen. The new bishop gave away the seat that Theophilus wanted and instead gave him the position of being a humble cleric. This made Theo super angry, and this is when he thought that maybe the church isn't as holy as he once thought they were. This is when he decided to summon the help of Satan. He ended up signing a contract with Satan in his own blood. He denounced Jesus and the Virgin Mary, and it is said that with the help of Satan, he was once again voted into the bishop position, and this time he accepted. At this point in time, it is said that he felt so guilty he confessed to this deal with the devil, and the priest who he confessed to decided that they should burn the blood-signed contract. For a second, Theo looked up, but then suddenly he collapsed and died. Many people believe that it was because he had broken his contract. And finally, in our number 1 spot today, we have Jonathan Moulton. Jonathan is a man who was born in 1726, and he was known for his military career. He served in King George's War as well as in the French and Indian Wars, but after his service is where the story really starts. Basically, after his time fighting was over, he went on to become one of New England's wealthiest men. This caused heads to swivel and rumors to swirl because this wasn't something that was normally seen. This all gave way for the rumor that Jonathan had struck his luck of fortune because he was actually working with the devil. People began to say that for financial gain, he in turn gave his eternal devotion and even his soul over to the devil. The devil would visit him every month in order to fill up his boot with gold. You know what happens with things like this though, people get greedy. It is said that despite this lavish lifestyle he was already living, he wanted more, and this led to him making the mistake of trying to trick the devil. He cut a hole in the floor above his basement and placed a boot over it, which also had a hole in the heel. Of course, he did this so that when the devil came with the gold, he'd get a whole basement full rather than just a boot. But the devil certainly caught on. From there, it is said that he burned down Jonathan's house along with all of the gold that lay inside. Starting off in our number 10 spot, we have Led Zeppelin. Rock and roll and Satanism have long been connected in some people's eyes, so it's no wonder that legendary band Led Zeppelin has experienced some of these dark connections. Back in January of 1982, evangelical broadcaster Paul Crouch began accusing different rock artists of hiding messages in their songs through backmasking, and one example that he pointed out was the classic Zeppelin tune Stairway to Heaven. He directly pointed to a segment of the song where he claimed that when played in reverse, he was hearing the words, "Oh, here's to my sweet Satan, the one whose little path would make me sad, whose power is Satan. He will give those with him 666. There was a little tool shed where he made us suffer, sad Satan." Satan. Since this accusation of satanic messages, this has definitely become one of the most famous instances of alleged backmasking, which has only added to the legacy of Zeppelin. In our number 9 spot today we have Bob Dylan. Not necessarily who I expected to put on this list, but there was an interesting interview back in 2004 that made many people speculate that the musician might have sold his soul. In the interview, he was explaining that he owes his years of fame and success to a deal he made. The interviewer asked, "Why are you still out here?" To which Dylan replied, "It goes back to that destiny thing. I made a bargain with it, you know, long time ago, and I'm holding up my end." The interviewer, of course, had to follow up on what that cryptic message was, so he asked, "What was your bargain?" Dylan replied, "To get where I am now." The interviewer asked, "Should I ask who you made the bargain with?" He replied, "With the chief commander." The interviewer clarified, "On this earth?" To which he answered, "In this earth and in a world we can't see." I can totally see why some people decided to draw their own conclusions from this. I mean, it sounds like he is basically speaking in riddles. While he doesn't outright say that he sold his soul, some believe that this is what he was trying to say in that interview. In our number 8 spot today we have Ozzy Osbourne. One of the most famous rock stars ever, Ozzy has long been connected to the occult. I mean, Ozzy, Prince of Darkness, didn't just come from nowhere. Aside from the rumors, however, Ozzy has been fairly open about his personal connection to the devil. In a 1984 issue of Hit Parader, Ozzy said, quote, "I really wish I knew why I've done some of the things I've done over the years. Sometimes I think that I'm possessed by some outside spirit. A few years ago, I was convinced of that. I thought I truly was possessed by the devil. I remember sitting through The Exorcist a dozen times saying to myself, yeah, I can relate to that." He even has expressed confusion over whether or not he's a medium for some kind of outside source, or if something much more sinister is at play. When speaking of actually selling his soul, well, Ozzy had some less than comforting things to say. He said, quote, "I already have. Well, you sell your soul to the devil when you do something yourself that you shouldn't, and I already have. I've lived my life to the fullest. If there's an afterlife, I've got a good spot in the furnace, you know?" I'll see you there, Ozzy. In our number 7 spot today we have Jay-Z. Rapper Jay-Z has long had some interesting stories and conspiracies surrounding him, including his alleged connection to the Illuminati. You know, this secret society that conspiracy theorist claims possesses this crazy, unknowable power. People often make this connection with a lot of people in the rap and hip-hop industry, but it happens to Jay-Z often due to him referencing the devil multiple times in his music videos. I mean, especially in the song Lucifer. People also make connections to certain imagery shown in his music videos and even in his merch or the things he wears himself as well, to things like the occult and Satan himself. Whether it's a pentagram, the all-seeing eye, or the phrase "do what thou wilt," it seems as though Jay-Z has some people in a satanic panic. In our number 6 spot today we have Robert Johnson. Well known for being one of the most incredible guitar players of all time, Robert was one of those people that some members of the public simply just couldn't see how he was so talented, so of course that led to some extremely haunting rumors swirling about him. Some people claimed that he was only able to gain his talent through supernatural means, which many claimed was by way of the devil. Story goes that Robert headed to the crossroads where the devil took his guitar, tuned it, and showed him how to master the blues. Unfortunately, however, with this eerie tale comes a very tragic end. Some say that in exchange for his abilities, Robert had to offer the later half of his life. He exchanged much of his life in order to make this deal. Sadly, Robert would pass away at the exceptionally young age of 27. Many claim this was actually due to a poisoning made by a jealous man. Whatever the real story behind his life, talents, and tragic death, the legacy of Robert certainly lives on. He was an incredibly prolific musician who left behind quite the record collection. In our number 5 spot today we have Niccolo Paganini. Niccolo was a professional violinist who was born in 1782. His parents began to send him to lessons when he was just 5 years old, and by age 15 he was already touring the world because he was so talented. What's interesting about Niccolo and his story, other than his obvious musical genius however, is the rumors surrounding his talent and subsequent recognition. According to some, people believe that his own mother summoned the devil in order for her son to be the extreme talent that he was. There are many modern diagnoses that could potentially explain some of what made Niccolo so talented, And I mean, we all know quite well that sometimes people are just born with extreme talent, but of course, in the early 1800s, people and their imagination certainly ran wild. The final reason why people believe Niccolo may have made a deal with the devil is because shortly before his death, Niccolo was quite sick. The doctors had a feeling he was nearing death, so they sent in a priest to pray over him. When Niccolo first saw the priest, it is said that he freaked out and sent the priest away. Many people believe that him pushing the priest away was only a confirmation of the fact that he was working with the devil. In our number 4 spot today, we have Giuseppe Tartini. Okay, so this story is one that is kind of similar to Niccolo's, but even more strange. Giuseppe was an Italian violinist and composer who lived during the 1700s. He went on to compose a song called The Devil's Trill Sonata, and not only this, but he also claimed to wake up one night to find Satan sitting on the edge of his bed playing the violin. It seems as though the devil really likes violins, apparently. What's extremely curious is after this alleged encounter, it is said that Giuseppe's violin skills hit heights never seen before. He was able to suddenly play extremely complicated trills that are impossible for most musicians, and apparently even today the sonata is too difficult for many musicians to play, which is why people believe that perhaps this story really was true. In our number 3 spot today, we have Jack Parsons. Jack was a man who was born just a few weeks prior to the Wright brothers flying the first airplane, and being born at a time like this had him growing up dreaming of and reading sci-fi novels about rocket ships taking people to space. It is said that this love of rocket ships and these dreams of going to space are what led to him summoning the devil in order to make a deal. Jack wanted to sell his soul in exchange for a rocket ship. This deal didn't end up working, but Jack continued to study science as he grew older. Later in life, he stumbled upon the teachings of Aleister Crowley and tried his hand at summoning things again. This time he tried to summon a goddess by the name of Babylon that was said to possibly help men get to the moon one day. Technically, in some ways, it worked, because Jack Parsons ended up helping create the jet fuel that is said to still be used today. Maybe it was his original deal with the devil, maybe it was the goddess, or maybe it was just good old passion and drive that did it. Guess that all depends on what you believe. In our number 2 spot today, we have Christoph Heisman. Back in 1677, Christoph was an artist who was working on a castle in Austria. He was so talented at his job that he had been commissioned by the nobles to do this work. There were rumblings about how he may have sold his soul to the devil, but no one was sure of it until it was said that Christoph confessed. He said he had 9 years prior and that he regretted it very much now and actually wanted an exorcism. They demanded to know if he was a practicing witch, but in the end it was decided that he was not, and that instead the devil just had a very strong hold on him. The local priest began giving Christoph exorcisms, and during these sessions, Christoph explained that he had these intense visions where he was coming face to face with the devil, who was in the form of a dragon. The dragon was holding the contract that held Christoph's soul, and this is when he was able to rip it out of the dragon's talons. When he woke up, it seemed as though he was cured. After this, he began painting pictures of the devil, and he even painted a story with multiple panels that told the story of how he sold his soul and how they helped him to get it back. In our number 1 spot today, we have Antoine Rose. This woman from the 15th century is often credited with our modern day image of a witch riding a broomstick. She became known as the Witch of Savoy, and she is said to have confessed to regularly meeting with the devil. I mean, let's be honest, history doesn't exactly have a good record with those accused of witchcraft, so it isn't quite clear if this deal with the devil was real, or if perhaps Antoine could just add 1 + 1 and then suddenly she was accused of being a witch and had to find a way to try and defend herself. Legend goes that she was in a position where she was in dire need of money, and when she asked her neighbors for help, they led her to a group of people who convinced her to ask the devil for help. When the devil appeared, he agreed to help, of course, in exchange for her rejection of God and her promise to worship him. Story has it that she said the devil had a low, raspy voice when he appeared to her in human form, and she also apparently said that she was quite afraid of him. Can we really blame her?
Number 10. Jason Mewes. Jason Mewes is an American actor, comedian, film producer, and podcaster. He's best known for playing Jay, the vocal half of the duo Jay and Silent Bob. He's also known for his roles in Clerks, Dogma, and Chasing Amy. Unfortunately, Jason has been known for struggling with addiction. In 2001, he failed to appear at a mandatory court hearing stemming from his arrest on charges. A warrant was issued and Jason was found to be essentially off the grid. In April 2003, he finally resurfaced, appearing in a Freehold, New Jersey courtroom to answer to charges. A judge sentenced him to mandatory rehab for several months, and he was also given probation through 2005. Number 9. Jay Quan. Jarrell C. Jones, better known by his stage name Jay Quan, is an American rapper best known for his 2004 single Tipsy, which peaked at number 2 in 2004. He went missing once in February 2010, sending his record label into a frenzy. Jay Quan eventually disappeared for a whole month before Gracie Productions issued a statement asking for any information about his whereabouts. In this bizarre case, even a social media handle at Where is Jay Quan surfaced on Twitter with followers leaving tips and info. People even went door to door trying to find any evidence for tracking back to the rapper. After being off the grid for several weeks, Jay Quan finally got in touch with Gracie Productions, explaining that he was taking some time to himself, as he sometimes does, not realizing that people would start to worry after a while. I mean, everyone needs some alone time sometimes, although it's very strange that he didn't tell anyone. But interestingly enough, Jay Quan's 4th studio album was released less than 3 weeks later. Was it just a publicity stunt? Who knows? Number 8. Chelsea O'Donnell. Chelsea O'Donnell is the daughter of comedian Rosie O'Donnell, and she went missing for nearly a week in the summer of 2015. Rosie first reported Chelsea missing from the Rockland County, New York area on Sunday, August 16th. By Tuesday, there was still no sign of Chelsea, and Rosie turned to social media for help. She posted messages on Twitter and Instagram asking the public for any information they could provide. By Wednesday, police had located Chelsea. She had been hiding out with a 25-year-old convicted criminal who sold illegal substances named Steve Shearer. Chelsea met Steve on Tinder and was apparently with him of her own accord. It would have been nice if she let her family know, but I'm glad she was found safe and nothing bad happened to her. Number 7. Ozzy Osbourne. Ozzy Osbourne is an English singer, songwriter, and television personality. He rose to prominence during the 1970s as the lead vocalist of the heavy metal band Black Sabbath, during which period he adopted the nickname Prince of Darkness. Now, Ozzy has been reported missing more than once. During his first tour with Black Sabbath, his bandmates were worried when they realized he had never checked into his room in their Atlanta hotel. They couldn't find him anywhere, so they actually had to cancel that night's show. The police and local radio stations were informed and put out a search party. Ozzy then suddenly appeared the next day as if nothing had happened. It turned out he had gotten drunk and passed out in the wrong room at the hotel, where he slept through the whole ordeal. Ozzy ended up getting sober, but he went missing again in 2016 when Sharon Osbourne, his wife of more than 40 years, discovered that he had been cheating on her with his hairstylist and kicked him out of the house. Ozzy's adult children grew concerned when they couldn't get in contact with him, believing he might have fallen off the wagon. Within 24 hours, he had been located and claimed to not have touched any alcohol or illegal substances. Number 6. Theo London. Theo London is an American rapper and singer. He is a frequent collaborator of Kanye West, as he was a producer on Donda 2 and was featured on Kanye's 2015 single All Day, which was nominated for several awards, including 2 Grammys. He has also worked in the fashion industry, conducting fashion campaigns for designers like Karl Lagerfeld, Virgil Abloh, and Gucci. And he has also designed shoes for companies including Cole Haan and modeling for Tommy Hilfiger. Theo was reported missing in California by his family on December 28, 2022. According to a statement from his record label, Theo's friends and family had not heard from him since July and were trying to piece together information about his whereabouts. A public message from his father read, "Theo, your dad loves you, son. We miss you, and all your friends and relatives are searching for you. Wherever you are, send us some signal. No matter what, we will come get you, son." On January 5th, Theo's cousin provided an update that he had been located. He said, "We have found Theo, he is safe and well. At this time, the family would love prayers and privacy." Number 5. Casey Kazim. Casey Kazim was an American disc jockey, actor, and radio personality who created and hosted several radio countdown programs, notably American Top 40. He was also the first actor to voice Shaggy Rogers in the Scooby-Doo franchise. Now, a court ruling on May 12, 2014 granted his daughter, Carrie Kazim, temporary conservatorship for her 82-year-old father. actor. Casey, who suffered from advanced Parkinson's disease and could no longer talk, was in the care of his wife, Carrie's stepmother, Jean Kazim, and had not been seen by any of his children by some time. During the trial, Jean's attorney, Craig Marcus, admitted neither he nor his client knew where Casey was, but were under the assumption that he had been removed from the country. Thankfully, Casey was found in Washington State 3 days later after this story broke. He was with his wife visiting another couple at their home. When asked, they said they were on vacation. Unfortunately, a month later though, he passed away due to his dementia in Washington. Number 4. Nick Stahl. Nick Stahl is an American actor who started out as a child actor. He gained recognition for his performance in the 1993 film The Man Without a Face. He later transitioned into his adult career with roles in the films The Thin Red Line, In the Bathroom, Terminator 3, Rise of the Machines. And he also played the character of Jason Riley on Fear the Walking Dead. Now, Nick was reported missing by his estranged wife, Rose Stahl, in May of 2012. She became alerted after she couldn't reach Nick for nearly a week and expressed worry that he might have taken too many illegal substances and died. Thankfully, within a few days after the story hit the media, Nick emerged from a downtown Los Angeles house saying he was fine and that he'd gotten into a 30-day inpatient rehab program. This wasn't the end of the drama, however. In June 2012, he went missing yet again. He apparently decided rehab wasn't for him, so he checked out of the facility and vanished. He wasn't missing for long though the second time around, as he surfaced days later after he bolted from the rehab facility, and his wife Rose reported that he was attending Alcoholics Anonymous meetings and in a good place. Number 3. Margot Kidder. Margot Kidder was a Canadian-American actress whose career spanned 5 decades. Her accolades included 3 Canadian Screen Awards and 1 Daytime Emmy Award. She's known for her roles in Black Christmas, The Amity Horror, and is most widely known for her performance as Lois Lane in the Superman film series, appearing in the first 4 films. Now, Margot was missing for 4 days in April of 1996 before she was discovered in a stranger's backyard in Glendale, California. She was found dirty and totally disoriented, suffering from what she described as the most public freakout in history. She was on the run and slept on the street for multiple days, she was delusional, and her 2 front teeth were missing. Margot later admitted that she suffered from bipolar disorder but had refused to take any prescribed medication for the condition. During her breakdown, she said she became increasingly paranoid. At one point, she believed that her first husband and the CIA were trying to end her life. When the police picked her up, she finally gave in to treatment for her manic depression. Number 2. Fan Bingbing. Fan Bingbing is a Chinese actress. From 2013 to 2017, she was included as the highest paid celebrity in the Forbes China Celebrity 100 list after ranking in the top 10 every year since 2006, and she appeared on Time's magazine list of the 100 most influential people in 2017. Her early work was in East Asian cinema and television, notably appearing in the drama series My Fair Princess. Her breakthrough came with the film Cell Phone, which was China's highest grossing film of the year. She went on to star in several Chinese films, which included Lost in Beijing, But a Mountain, and Double Exposure. In 2018, she disappeared without a trace. Questions, concerns, and rumors about her whereabouts grew when she was not seen after a last public appearance on July 1st, 2018, and a lack of social media activity after the 23rd of July. She was charged with tax evasion and then fell off the face of the earth. She was presumed missing, and rumors suggested that Fan had been arrested, but they were not confirmed. In August, Fan's manager, Jersey Chong, stated via social media that Fan was never arrested. She then popped back up on October 3rd, 2018 with a statement on social media apologizing to the public for tax evasions after the Chinese authorities ordered her and her companies to pay about $127.4 million US in taxes and penalties to avoid criminal prosecution. And coming in at number 1 is Randy Quaid. Randy Quaid is an actor best known for his roles in A Streetcar Named Desire, Independence Day, and most notably for playing Cousin Eddie in the Vacation movies. In 2009, Randy and his wife were arrested for allegedly defrauding an innkeeper in Santa Barbara by using an invalid credit card to pay a $10,000 bill. They were released on bail and eventually paid most of the bill. However, they repeatedly failed to appear in court and warrants were issued for their arrest. They eventually appeared in court the following year, where the case was dismissed against Randy for lack of evidence. Then in September 2010, 2010, Randy and his wife were charged with burglary after they spent 5 days occupying the guest house in a vacant home they once owned in Santa Barbara. They claimed that the home was wrongfully transferred to a third party by the use of forged signature. Warrants for their arrest were issued after they failed to appear in court, and in October 2010 they moved to Vancouver, Canada, where they sought asylum in Canada, stating that they feared for their lives in the United States. People thought they fled due to them running from the law, but they claimed they'd fled to avoid the Hollywood Star Whackers, which they claim is a secret organization that takes celebs out or manufactures scandals to discredit them. While being in Canada, no one knew what was going on with them until they were caught in 2015 after the couple attempted to drive across the border into Vermont and were detained by US Customs due to their legal issues.
Coming in at number 10, Robert Johnson. One of the most famous situations of someone selling their soul to the devil. It would seem that he kind of got a raw deal, because even though this dude became one of the best jazz players of all time, he died at 27. Dude, if I'm selling my soul to the devil, you better believe that I'm going to want to live a full life. Like, you get my soul for eternity after I die. The least you can do is let me enjoy the deal until I'm in my 90s, and I want to be a good 90. Like, I want to be able to run around like I'm Jack LaLanne. But rumor has it that Johnson was horrible at the guitar before he made his deal with the devil. Back then when he played music, it was so bad that cats would scream and people would throw stuff at him. Then he left for a while, went to the mysterious crossroads, and came back a god of the guitar. He might have just found a teacher who was willing to show him how to use the tools that he was given that unlock his God-given powers to play the axe like a legend. Or maybe he did go down the easy road and got the devil to hook him up with some unholy powers to juice the whole thing up a little bit. Either way, if I was him, I would have played into the rumor because it would have made you more popular. Everyone would want to come see the man who sold his soul to the devil to play like a god. They would want to know what the devil could give you. Coming in at number 9, we have Giuseppe Tartini. This is really how you reach legendary status. Just like Robert Johnson, you want to be a person so good at your craft that the only way people can justify it is by saying that you made a deal with the devil, that you are so unreal at ripping down what you do that you must have done some dirty work to get that good. That's what I want for my life. I want people to be like, this dude was for sure on some performance enhancers, or he was using black magic, because there's no way that anyone could be that good at what this guy did. That's what happened with Giuseppe. This dude was ripping through the violin so good that people were like, the devil must have hooked him up with some good juice. People thought that he could have had 6 fingers on one hand that allowed him to play notes that no one else could ever play. The story goes that Giuseppe woke up and the devil was sitting on the edge of his bed just ripping the violin. Like, the dude was so legendary at the violin that Giuseppe was awestruck. Then the devil just vanished. Giuseppe quickly wrote down everything he could remember from the song, and that became the Devil's Trill Sonata. It blew people away and everyone was breaking down to that song. It was so sick. But Giuseppe said the song that the devil played was even more legendary and was super lit. Those were his exact words. Coming in at number 8, we have Christian Bale, one of the greatest actors of our generation. How does he do it? Well, it must be the devil. I'm starting to see a pattern here. It seems like back in the day, people used to say the best people must have sold their soul to the devil in order to become great, because how else could they do it? Nowadays, if you become rich and famous, you are part of the Illuminati, which worships the devil. I mean, it's the only logical answer, right? It's not like people just work really hard and then they are able to achieve things that no other person ever could. There's no way that these speculations could be coming from people who haven't achieved anything of substance, looking up at the people above them and then creating insane dialogue so they can cope with their inadequacies. No, that could never be the case, but in the case of Christian Bale, he did actually thank the devil in one of his Golden Globe speeches, which is pretty sus. I mean, he was probably just trying to stir the pot because he knows that people will freak out if he says something like that, or maybe the dude does believe in the devil. I don't know. Alright, coming in the next spot, we have Johann Faust. Unlike the other people on this list so far, this dude is a legendary bad guy. Faust was a teacher, professor, and one of the smartest people of his generation. He was alive in the 1500s, and back then he had one goal and one goal only. That was to become the smartest man alive. He wanted people to bow down to him and his genius, and he wanted the recognition that he believed he deserved. Because of this, he had an ego the size of Jupiter and thought that everyone was beneath him. He would beat his students, and he was known for being rude to everyone around him. Now, I don't know if it's because this guy was so mean or if it's because he was really into magic, but people thought that he was working with the devil. I guess if you're mean and you like magic, there would be nothing stopping you from getting into the dark arts. People even thought that this guy's dog was a demon, that it walked around, a demonic dog, and tried to attack people, and when no one was looking, it would morph into a human that would serve Faust. Eventually the dude died, and it was the spectacular fashion in which this dude died which solidified him as someone who worked with the devil. His lab exploded and the dude died in a ball of flames. The rumor says that there was a pair of hoof prints burned into the floorboards. Coming number 6, we have Niccolo Paganini. Man, back in the day, if you could rip the violin that good, people thought you must have been up to some funny business. There is no way you could get that good just off of skill and hard work, no way at all. Niccolo Paganini was very young when he picked up the violin. At only age 11, he would touch the instrument for the first time, and right away it would seem that he was destined to be one of the best in the world. When he was still a teenager, he was performing in front of hundreds of people. This guy was definitely a prodigy, but as we have learned, the theme of this list is that people can't trust you if you start to get too good. So there was talk that this dude sold his soul to the devil. People said that he would perform rituals to make himself more powerful, and that he even used dark magic to infuse a soul into his violin so it would sound even more beautiful. People say they saw the devil come out of him and stand next to him when he played. The kicker to this was that he didn't want to be blessed before he died. This was something that was very common back in the day. People wanted a priest to give them some sort of magic so they could go up and hang out with God, but Paganini denied this. Maybe because he knew he was going to hell and it was going to be way cooler and way more fun than going to heaven. Coming in number 5, we have Jimmy Page, once again hitting it with a legendary musician. It would be no surprise that the lead guitarist of Led Zeppelin, one of the greatest rock bands in the world, has suspicions circling around him that he made a deal with the devil. I mean, when rock and roll was coming up, everyone was saying that it was the devil's music. Well, then the devil has great taste, that's all I'm saying. But there's a little more juice to this than Republicans in the 70s being afraid that music was going to bring the end of the world. The thing is, Jimmy was actually a huge fan of the occult and apparently was very open about following the teachings to try and get better at guitar. Hey man, if you're trying to make it to the top, there isn't really anything wrong you can do as long as you're not hurting anyone. Cast a spell from a book to make those fingers move as fast as you can so you're always on the cutting edge of music. And all this came together when apparently you could hear the devil speak when you played Stairway to Heaven backwards. Yeah, I don't think that is true, but people love to think that the devil is hiding in rock and roll. Coming in number 4, we have Snoop Dogg. Yeah, Snoop D-O-double-G. This dude is a legend. Could you imagine you're so much of a legend that you became one of the best rappers of all time? You started popping into movies. You changed your name to Snoop Lion for a bit. You become a commentator for a Mike Tyson fight, and you become best friends with Martha Stewart after she goes to jail. This dude has lived a life that would put most people to shame. Now, how has he been able to be so legendary? Was it skill? Was it luck? Was it coming up with his own language that people would actually learn to speak? Well, no, it was of course a deal with the devil, guys. Apparently in a song, Snoop talks about a voice coming into him and telling him to make a deal, and if he took the deal, he would live eternal and forever. Not a bad deal if you ask me. Coming in number 3, we have Urbain Grandier. It should be no surprise that the church has some weird things going on inside its walls. I mean, we know that it's full of creeps today that are doing horrible things, so someone who worships the devil is kind of small potatoes compared to the other things that are going on. Now, Urbain was ahead of his time when it came to being a horrible person in the church. He was apparently summoning the devil all the time and had magical powers. He would put curses on people he didn't like, and there was even a contract found that was said to be signed by the devil, and it was used against him in court. Could you imagine today, someone finds a fake contract and then they use it against you to put you in prison? Lol, that is great. Coming in number 2, we have Antonio Rose. This case of selling your soul to the devil was so famous that it impacted the culture of witches forever. So Rose was living back in the 1400s, and she wasn't doing well. She was trying to take care of her kid, but her husband had left, so she had to do whatever she could to try and keep this kid alive. Apparently the stress of just trying to stay alive started to wear on her, and she started to indulge in psychedelic drugs that you could rub on your skin. She was seen rubbing it on a broom handle and then riding it like you see witches do in popular culture today. Eventually people started to make claims that she was a witch and working with the devil when she attacked someone who came close to her home. She was arrested and convicted of being a witch and selling her soul to the devil. And coming at the number 1 spot, we have John Moulton. Now this one takes the number 1 spot just because it's funny. Apparently John Moulton was ready to sell his soul to the devil, but he had a plan. See, if you look through the history of the devil, he isn't the hardest dude to outsmart. John made a deal with the Prince of Darkness that he would sell his soul. The devil came and filled his boots with gold. The devil was like, heck yes, but then the devil came to do his job and he found that Moulton had put his boots at the top of a chimney and cut out the bottoms. Basically, if the devil wanted to fill the boots with with gold, he would have had to fill the whole chimney. And the devil hates being tricked, so he burned his house down. Basically, it's the same thing when traders on Wall Street bets learn how to make money off of the stock market, and then Robin Hood stopped them from trading because the devil can never lose.
Starting off this countdown, we have Scar's corpse. The Lion King's character Scar can be seen in Hercules, but he's not alive. No, they show his dead body, which is pretty dark, Disney. Sheesh. So in Hercules, there's a scene where Hercules is wearing a lion on his body while he's getting painted. He then takes it off and throws it on the floor, and we can clearly tell that it's the body of Scar. So after the Lion King, Scar was skinned and then given to Hercules. How dark. And this was actually confirmed by Disney's lead animator. Andreas Deja worked on animating both Hercules and Scar in The Lion King. So they threw this in as a little Easter egg. In our 9th spot, we have The Shining. And if you guys are liking this video so far, why don't you hit that thumbs up button? Because it really helps us out and I appreciate it. Stephen King's The Shining was referenced an awful lot all throughout Toy Story, which is super whack because we all know that The Shining is not a kid's movie and is certainly not Disney friendly. First, let's take a look at the first Toy Story. Fans were quick to point out that the carpet in Sid's house looks exactly like the carpet in the hotel in The Shining. I mean, they are different shades, but it's the exact same design, which is also quite clever because then they're trying to use this to symbolize how terrified the toys feel inside of Sid's house by comparing it to how the characters felt living in the hotel in The Shining. Like 10 out of 10, that was super well done. But that's not all. There was another reference to The Shining, but this time in Toy Story 3. They used the number 237 a lot throughout this film. 237 is referenced to room 237 in The Shining. This number can be seen on the license plate of a garbage truck, on a message Woody sent to a toy whose code name is Velocitar 237, and on the side of a security camera in Sunnyside Daycare. In fact, one of the editors on the film admitted that these were all references to The Shining. I mean, it's kind of a weird movie to reference in a kid's film, but whatever. Moving on, at number 8 we have Melted Olaf. Sadly, a lot of Disney characters don't have the happy ever after we thought they did. Next, let's take a look at Olaf from Frozen. He's such a fun and loving character, but sadly, he doesn't have the best ending. Sometime after Frozen, Olaf dies. He melts away. And his body can be seen in Moana. If you take a close look at the supplies Moana is carrying with her on her boat, you can see an oddly shaped carrot and a stick that looks like a hand. Looks exactly like Olaf's nose and hands. So Moana was using his nose as food and his arms as a possible fire starter for her mission. Well, that's dark. In our 7th spot, we have Finding Nemo. Again, for this next Easter egg, let's take a look at the tearjerker of a movie, Brother Bear. For real, if this movie didn't make you cry, then you're a monster, or your heart is made out of ice. Anyways, in one scene when the character is salmon fishing, we can see Nemo among the group of salmon that's about to be caught and eaten. First off, how the hell did Nemo, a tropical fish, get so far north? Like, Marlin must be tired of looking for your ass. Anyways, what does this mean? Well, it means that Nemo, the little rascal, went out again and got lost somehow. And then he ended up as someone's meal. I doubt he made it out alive this time. Now, it turns out that at this time, Disney and Pixar were feuding, so that might be why this creepy little cameo was put into the film. In our 6th spot, we have Skinned Sully. Now, I love the movie Monsters, Inc., so this one is pretty dark for all you fans out there. But Sully is dead. Yep, you heard me. He died sometime after Monsters, Inc. was released. So in the film, Randall always mentions how bad humans are. At one point, he says that humans skin monsters and make toilet seat covers out of their fur. Sadly, this foreshadowed the fate of Sully. In a Toy Story short called Toy Story Toons, Partysaurus Rex, there's a scene where we see a kid taking a bubble bath. And it just so happens that in the bathroom on the toilet seat is a fuzzy Sully seat cover. So Randall was right. Humans do skin the monsters and turn them into toilet seat covers. Poor Sully, he ended up being skinned alive. I wonder what happened to Mike then. We're now at our 5th and halfway mark with Boo Went Crazy. This next Disney Easter egg is accompanied with a pretty dark and crazy theory, so buckle your seatbelts. In the movie Brave, in the witch's workshop, we can see a wood carving of Sully. Why would that be there? First off, Brave takes place hundreds of years before Monsters, Inc. does. The witch and Sully didn't exist at the same time, but she drew him, meaning at some point in her life, she must have met him. Well, theory goes that this witch in Brave is Boo from Monsters, Inc. I know it seems wild right now, but just hear me out. So Monsters, Inc. takes place in the future when humans don't exist anymore. It's theorized that the monsters use the doors to go back in time to a child's house to then collect their energy. Meanwhile, in Brave, we see that the witch magically disappears when she goes through doorways. Just like the scarers from Monsters, Inc. do. So theory goes that Boo couldn't forget about Sully. She missed him so much that when she grew up, she figured out how to teleport through doors. She then teleports through these doors in an attempt to stumble across Sully again. It's just sad because she did not age well. And who's gonna tell her that Sully is a toilet seat cover? Not me. Coming in at number 4, we have The Shining Part 2. Toy Story isn't the only Disney movie to reference The Shining. The movie Coco does it too. And this is because the guy that added the Shining Easter eggs in Toy Story also worked on Coco. So in one scene, we see Dante, the dog, waking up from a nap. In the background, we see an axe stuck in a tree. We all didn't think much about it. We probably just missed it too. But the director said that the axe was modeled after one of the axes from The Shining. That's not the only reference though. In that same shot, right behind the axe, there is a red drum. The director said that this was a reference to Red Rum from The Shining, which we learned is murder backwards. You thought that was it? Think again. The Grady twins from The Shining also make an appearance. Yeah, you know those creepy little twin girls in blue dresses? They're in Coco. As Coco runs through Frida Kahlo's underworld art studio, we see a painting of the two twin girls. The director again confirmed this reference. So creepy. Yeah, let's put The Shining in a kids movie. Great. In our third spot, we have The Last Rex. Rex from Toy Story can be seen in the 2008 film WALL-E. In one scene, we see him in the back, among Wally's collection of human junk. Now, if you think about this Easter egg is actually very depressing. Rex is all alone in a world that has been completely destroyed. All of his friends are dead. He's alone, isolated, and unloved. And as we know from all the Toy Story movies, loneliness really gets to these sentient toys. Rex is probably so anxious and depressed now. Moving on to number 2, we have Herbie Fully Drowned. Speaking of sentient things, our favorite car Herbie from Herbie Fully Loaded has died. This car has made a cameo in a number of Disney movies, but sadly, his time has come to an end. In Finding Dory, there's a scene where we see Herbie at the bottom of the ocean. He's badly decayed and covered in moss, meaning he's been down there for quite some time. Now, I don't know if Lindsay Lohan pushed the car into the ocean or what, but we all know that cars and oceans or large bodies of water don't mix. So sadly, his time has come to an end. And in our number 1 spot, we have The Three Little Pigs. Disney is sick for this next Easter egg. So for this one, let's jump back in time and take a look at Disney's animated short, The Three Little Pigs. In one scene, we see the pigs singing and dancing in one of their homes. But beside them, in the back, is a framed picture of sausages. As we all know, sausages are made out of pig. To make matters worse, the frame is labeled as father. So their father got turned into sausages and then eaten. In another scene, we see another framed piece of meat. This time, it's like a ham leg or something, and it's also labeled as father. So the Three Little Pigs' father was killed, hacked up, and sold as different meat items. Like, that is so twisted and sick.